Welcome to the Holistic Therapy Interviews. I'm Lucy, a high flow coach, and I'm joined today by Hannah Charman. Hi, Hannah.
Hi, Lucy. Thank you for inviting me to join you today.
You are most welcome. Thank you for being with us. Now, today we're going to be diving into the world of herbal medicine. And so if this is something that's of interest to you, Hannah is definitely somebody to be looking at because she is a natural menopause specialist who loves helping women to thrive through menopause without HRT. She qualified as a medical herbalist in 1999 and since then has gone on to combine herbal medicine with health coaching, advanced hypnotherapy, and iridology. She has an honours degree in Western herbal medicine and a diploma in advanced hypnotherapy, and she lives in her spiritual home of Shropshire. So with that, Hannah, I'd love to hand over to you to share your story, your pivot moments, and why herbs?
Thank you. So I always say that I didn't choose the herbs, but the herbs chose me. And a lot of herbalists do say that, actually. It's more of a calling than anything else. But I came to herbal medicine, you could say, by accident, really, if you believe in accidents. When I was 14, I was very ambitious. So I wanted to be a vet, and I worked really hard to get my grades to start getting into vet school. And then I had a different hobby every night of the week and at weekends. And I just kept going and going and going. I was on the go the whole time. And then one day I went to school perfectly fine. My dad picked me up from school. I got in the car, fine. On the way back, he asked if I would get out to just go to the shop and fetch something from the shop. And I couldn't get out of the car. And it had taken literally 5 minutes. And that was the beginning of 2 years with chronic fatigue syndrome. So it became apparent very early on that I wasn't going to get better on my own. So I was taken to see the GP. And my dad literally held me up to get me into the surgery because I couldn't walk properly. And the doctor took one look at me and then he spoke over me to my dad. And he said, she's clearly got a problem with school. You need to get her to an educational psychologist because she's doing this because she doesn't want to go to school. And he looked at me and said, you need to pull yourself together and get back to school.
Interesting
That
diagnosis.
was that was all the help I was going to get chess. And so thankfully I got taken to see other private practitioners who worked in alternative medicine because we realized the doors with conventional medicine were very firmly shut. So I was taken to see a homeopathic doctor who was the complete opposite of the NHS GP. And he sat down, he asked me tons of questions, he listened to what I was saying, he examined me, he prescribed different supplements and different homeopathic remedies. And I remember coming out of his office thinking, this man's going to help me. I'm going to be okay. You know, there is light at the end of this tunnel.
Wow.
And I began to get better, which is what made me think, do you know what? I'd like to do something like what he does. I wasn't 100% clear on what exactly, but I wanted to do something like him and help other people who felt helpless and hopeless to feel like they're back in control and everything's going to be okay. And then the herbs came a bit later. I was taken to see a hypnotherapist. And my parents were so impressed after one session of hypnotherapy that they both quit their jobs and retrained as hypnotherapists themselves.
That's incredible.
So my dad came out of the police and my mum came out of teaching, and they set up a practice from home. And we lived in South London. And I'd gone up to be like a guinea pig. I've gone up to be practiced on by the other students on their courses. So I learned quite a bit about hypnotherapy that way. And learned about the training that they'd had and the techniques that they were using and how powerful they were. And I just decided that at some point in the future, I'd like to learn those hypnotherapy techniques. It actually took me about 30 years to find the right person to teach me and to get the opportunity, but I did do that. I'm qualified last. And then my dad and I did a Reiki course. So my CFS symptoms were probably about 80% gone. But I was having to go to bed really early every night just to sort of get out of bed the next day and be reasonably functional at school. My dad and I did a Reiki course together, and that saw off the last of the symptoms. And then we started treating the hypnotherapy patients with the Reiki as well and offering the Reiki to them. And I was the extra pair of hands after school. So I've really worked in alternative medicine since I was about 16.
Yeah.
And then gone on. The herbs found me in the end. Because I'd taken so much time off school being ill, I won the French prize for getting quite a high grade in my GCSE French, and I won a book token. And I've still got the book here that I bought with the book token, which was David Hoffman's New Holistic Herbal. And that's what inspired me to work with herbs.
Fantastic.
So that's what set me on the path. And then my practice has evolved quite a bit over the years. And I've brought in health coaching, mostly because my patients weren't responding as quickly and as well to the herbs as we both wanted and expected them to. And it was because they didn't have those basics of good health in place. The diet wasn't quite right, or they weren't sleeping enough, or they were very stressed at work, or, you know, and the herbs found it really difficult to do their job. So we started bringing in those basics of good health, just with a bit of gentle guidance around, you know, what to eat, what not to eat, helping them to get a good night's sleep, helping them to get some exercise. And the results just improved overnight when we started doing that. Then we brought the hypnotherapy in last year. So that's brilliant if, obviously, if there's things like anxiety and stress going on and those things that we traditionally think of hypnotherapy as being really good at, but also things like motivation. So if, you know, we know, like I did a couple of years ago, I knew I desperately needed to get some exercise in every day. I was taking ages to get up and down the stairs. I was piling on the weight, and I just knew if I could exercise, it would all be okay. But I still couldn't find the motivation to exercise. And when I had hypnotherapy for that, I was in the swimming pool 3 times a week, and everything just cleared up within 3 weeks or so.
It's great, isn't it? Taking the holistic approach and going back to what you were saying about the herbs that worked so well before for your clients.
Yeah.
This world has gone a bit crazy mad, and there's so much thrown at us all the time.
Yeah.
And so it's looking at that holistic, it's the whole person, the whole thing.
Yeah, absolutely.
So tell us more about the herbs, because I know that you're really focusing in on women with HRT and not having to take HRT. So tell us more about that, Hannah.
Yeah, so around about a third to a half of women who are going through menopause either can't take HRT for medical reasons, so maybe they've had cancer or something like that in the past, or they just want a more natural way through. And I've worked on and off with menopausal patients for a number of years. I've been qualified now nearly 25 years, so I've worked with it quite a bit. And then after my son was born 9 years ago, I went straight into perimenopause myself. And other members of my family have been really severely impacted by their menopause, and I didn't want to go down the same road as them. So I started using herbs a long time ago to help me through my menopause, and it's worked wonders. So then my friends started coming for treatment, and they got better, and they sent their friends, and they sent their friends. And before I knew where I was, around about 85–80% of my caseload is menopause. But going forward, I'm really focusing in on cancer survivors in particular who can't take HRT and need a lot of support and solutions to their symptoms that are safe and effective and actually work, you know, will actually give them a really good quality of life back, which herbs are absolutely brilliant at.
Are you able to tell us about which herbs, or do you have like a secret remedy, or what happens there?
Well, because all of the medicine I make is personalized to the individual. So it really depends. I can't say, well, you know, you can use that herb instead of that drug, or whichever way it goes. So but the way I work in general is to do a full case history to begin with, which takes around about an hour. And if possible, I'll take a look at their eyes. So if they're coming to see me in person, then I'll do an eye examination whilst they're with me. If not, we can do quite a bit actually remotely with a good quality photo. And then by using the iridology, I get some insight into their inherent constitution, so where their weak spots are. And then I can fine tune their herbal prescription accordingly. But there's different layers to the herbal prescription. So because I've got a full case history and I can see the bigger picture, I'm just taking menopause in that context, if you like. So it might be, for example, that there's been a long history of gut problems, and there's likely to be inflammation in the body and perhaps even in the brain. And we can start to use the herbs on that very deep level to unpick that and start to put it right. Then I add in herbs that help the body to cope with stress, because our stress hormones and our reproductive hormones are very closely intertwined. So if you've had a high stress life for a very long time, or you've had trauma in the past, it's inevitable that it will impact your menstrual cycle and your menopause as you move through. So lots of herbs in to help deal with stress. Then I add in herbs specifically for hormone balance. So they might be herbs like sage or red clover or fennel, that contain phytoestrogens, and they have a balancing effect on estrogen. Some women are not comfortable taking herbs with phytoestrogens in, because particularly if they've had cancer in the past, they might have been warned off that by their oncologist. That's based on old research. The new research that's come out in the last 30 years or so has said that actually herbs that contain phytoestrogens can have a protective effect on estrogen receptive cancers. But anyway, if they're not comfortable taking phytoestrogens, we can still use other herbs to help balance the hormones without the phytoestrogens. And then finally, I put in herbs that will target specific symptoms. So say, for example, you've got anxiety and palpitations that you've only had since menopause began, then something like motherwort might be put in for that. Sage for hot flushes, or black cohosh. There's other herbs for other symptoms, brain fog. You know, we might use rosemary, or we might use something like holy basil for brain fog. So it's a very individualized prescription based on which symptoms you want to work on first. So if you've got 30 different things going on, then I'll just say, right, where do you want to begin and how do you want to prioritize? And then I build the prescription around that. And then as time goes by and those symptoms start to calm down, then we add in new herbs to deal with the other ones.
Okay, so I'm going to ask one of those time questions. How fast have you seen those herbs work? And what's kind of the longer game? And maybe where's an average of it working for your 80% of clients for that particular challenge?
So my aim with a fully integrated program, we'll be using herbs and certainly health coaching, possibly hypnotherapy. We get about an 80% improvement within 12 weeks as a rule. Generally, you'd start to see an improvement within 1 to 2 weeks, and it's not unusual to get a 50% improvement within about 4 weeks.
Wow.
It depends on so many things. So if someone is super stressed and they're not able to do anything about this situation, unfortunately, then it does take quite a lot longer. It's much harder then for the treatments to do their thing. But that's the only exception. Where it does take longer, because there's so much strain on the body through the stress that it becomes much harder to treat. So yeah, it gets quick results, and it gets very profound results, and most of my patients go away really happy with how well they've done. Yeah.
Fantastic. Well, I'm sure you'll get a lot more, because we're going to put Hannah's details in the description box below. So if you're thinking, I need to get hold of this lady, then just look in the description box below. So who can take herbs? Can it be for children? Can it be for babies? Can it be for the old as well? And men and women? So is it everybody can take it?
Everyone can take herbs. So I know some people think, well, if they're on other medications, they can't take. Again, sometimes doctors and pharmacists will warn them off taking herbs. That's mostly because the doctor or the pharmacist doesn't really understand herbs at all. They've had no training in them, and they don't really get how they work. So they just err on the side of caution and warn you off taking them. But they are very effective taken alongside other medications. In fact, sometimes they help those other medications to work. Likewise, occasionally you can get a problem where there'll be a negative interaction and it might interfere, but I check for those beforehand. So I know most of the more common interactions, but I can also check a database and ask colleagues if I'm unsure whether it's appropriate to prescribe a herb. So I always do that.
Yeah, fantastic. I love that answer. And so we've found out the who, and what is the what? What can they come to see you for? What do herbs help? I mean, I think herbs are absolutely wonderful, and I was introduced to them years ago and had an amazing result. I absolutely love the power of herbs. So if somebody was suffering with something, or what are the symptoms and the things that you can help with through herbs with people?
Typically, we're really good at helping people with conditions that don't respond well to mainstream treatment, which is most chronic health conditions. So obviously, menopause is not really a health condition. It's just a transition that we go through. But sometimes HRT will do part of the job and fix some of the symptoms, and you might need herbs to plug the gap. But other really good examples would be things like chronic fatigue syndrome, fibromyalgia, IBS, inflammatory bowel disease, kind of mild to moderate anxiety and depression, because we're looking at you holistically. So if, say, that's come from a leaky gut and from inflammation resulting from that, then we can work on the physical level as well as on the psycho-emotional side of it as well. You can use herbs in first aid situations, and there are herbalists who go to the big festivals over the summer with a first aid station, and they're usually busier than the mainstream ones. But I really like treating people with chronic conditions who are kind of beyond the help of mainstream healthcare, because obviously that's my background myself. So
Yeah, that's the reason you
yeah,
got started, wasn't it? With the alternative side of things, or complementary
absolutely.
side of things. Yeah, absolutely. Okay, and what other questions would you say that you commonly get asked?
Oh, all sorts of things. So I get, is herbal medicine the same as homeopathy? No, it's not quite the same. So homeopathy works. I'm a full believer in homeopathy. I don't know how it works, but it works on an energetic level. So there's, with homeopathy, you take what we call a mother tincture, and it might be made from a plant or an animal or a mineral of some kind. And then you put 1 drop of that into 100 drops of water, and 1 drop of that into another 100 drops of water. And you keep diluting it down until there's nothing of the original tincture in it. So it's working on an energetic level, which herbs do as well to some degree. But with herbs, you can take them to a lab and put them through all kinds of tests. You can isolate constituents and say, well, that constituent will do that in the body. And you can get more of a scientific understanding as to what they're doing physiologically. Herbal medicine is a bit of an art and a science at the same time. So we respect the traditions and the folklore around the herbs, and that gives us one way of understanding them. And then we also have the science as well, not as much as we'd like always, but science helps to explain how the herbs are doing their job, which is really interesting. And I love it when the science backs up the tradition and the folklore and the old ways.
Yeah.
So that's one question. I don't practice Chinese herbal medicine. Most people have heard of Chinese herbal medicine, but don't know that we have a tradition native to the Western world. So I practice Western herbal medicine, which uses herbs that you've probably got in your garden or that grow near where you live. And that tradition comes from the Middle East and from Eastern Europe. So sort of, Iran area and Greece and Italy. And then it's made its way across here.
Yeah.
So yeah.
And you say you don't do the Chinese herbal medicine. So have you looked into both? Are they very different? Are they just using different herbs? Perhaps it's different areas.
It's poles apart. So the model that the Chinese herbalists use is so different to what we use in the West. I find it impossible to do the two. There are herbalists who are like bilingual with their traditions, but I can't do it. It's too far apart and too much for me to get my head around. Unfortunately, over here we have a broken tradition of our form of herbal medicine, because in the Middle Ages we had the witch burnings, and the witches were herbalists. And they didn't just burn the witches, but they burnt all the books, or most of the books as well. I know one book that survived from that era. But that was a Holocaust scale massacre of wise women and herbalists. And I don't think we've ever really recovered from that. Whereas in Asia, they've got thousands of years of unbroken tradition. So it's partly why I think it's much stronger over there than it is here, unfortunately.
That's so interesting. I never knew that. I knew that the doctors over there use herbs, don't they? And they don't get paid unless they get somebody well, and they're using
and
them.
it takes 20 years. They're not considered competent until they've been studying for about 20 years.
Wow. Fantastic.
So yeah, interesting.
Okay, so we're going to come to a final question. It's going to be your 3 top tips for our listeners, Hannah, if they're thinking, oh, herbs, I can just go into my garden and throw something together, and I don't really need to see a herbalist or whatever. Your 3 top tips for somebody who's interested in finding out more. And then just a very quick overview. It's very safe to use herbs. There was an old school of thought, science can sometimes be wrong, right? That said it wasn't safe to use some herbs along with some other medicines or with a particular condition that you were in. But now that's not there anymore, and that's been like that for about 30 years. And going to see a medical herbalist, herbologist is fantastic, because they will personalize it for you. It's not just looking at, oh, this is the herb for something. It's looking at the whole you, the complete you, your lifestyle, what you're doing, your stress levels, absolutely everything, taking all of that into account, and then giving you a personalized recipe of those herbs. And so I'm going to pass back over to Hannah and ask for your 3 top tips.
So my 3 top tips are, I think if you're considering using herbs, ideally, if you can, do work with a medical herbalist. I know there's an investment involved in that, but we do so much to help you, and it, you know, really can turn your health around and your life around. We're not just treating the condition that you're arriving with, we're treating all of you and your whole medical history and everything that's going on behind the scenes. But we also, because we're taking your full case history in one go, we can spot patterns that other practitioners can't spot because they've only got you for 5 minutes or so. And so if I look at your notes, I think, do you know what? I wonder if it's that. And has that been tested for? And, you know, if it is that and we catch it early, we can probably turn it around rather than leaving it 6 months. So then I would have a discussion with the patient and say, you know, there's a chance we could look into this and see if this is what's really going on behind the scenes, and offer to speak to their GP, contact their GP and see if we can facilitate some tests. And I have done that on a number of occasions, and sometimes it does throw up something that wouldn't have been spotted and picked up early otherwise.
Lovely, love
so
that.
it is worth every penny, particularly in that kind of situation. I would learn as much as you can about herbs and start using them at home. You know, to find websites with blogs written by herbalists who use these things, you know, day in, day out. Make sure you're getting good, reliable information, and start using herbs at home. Start getting some herbal teas in and looking at the herbs that are growing in your garden and learning about those, because it's a lovely way to reconnect with nature as well on a very deep level, which I find really calming and really grounding. With all the craziness that's going on in the world at the moment, it's nice to just find that kind of constant reassurance in nature. So I think start using herbs at home, and just take care of yourself, prioritize your own well-being. That's also really important. And we wait till we reach things like menopause and we start to really suffer before we go, oh, maybe I should go to bed early, maybe I should eat a bit better, and maybe I should change my job. And don't leave it that long. Please don't wait until you're at death's door before you make the changes, because the longer you leave it, the harder it is to put right, and actually the more expensive it is to put right as well. So even tiny little things you can do make a huge difference. You know, 30 minutes exercise a day cuts your risk of dementia by 30 to 40%. That's just one thing you can do.
Wow.
And we're not told that. We're not told these things. So again, just go and seek out this kind of information because it's out there, but you have to know where to find it.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
And is there a website that people can go, okay, I want to find somebody who is accredited. Where would I go and find that?
So for medical herbalists, I'd recommend going to the National Institute of Medical Herbalists website, which is www.nimh.org.uk. And you can find your nearest herbalist if you want to work face-to-face. Obviously, you can get in touch with me if you're happy to work online. And more herbalists are coming to specialise in particular areas that they're interested in as well. So, you know, if you want someone who specialises in IBS or ADHD or any of those sorts of things, there's more herbalists now who are coming to specialise.
Yeah. Fantastic. Well, thank you so much, Hannah. I'm sure our audience have got an absolute mine from your information, and an absolute ton of information and inspiration. It's been very interesting talking to you and finding out about the difference between the Chinese and the Western traditions. That's fascinating. And the power of herbs is absolutely huge. So yeah, if you're going to start using them, definitely start using them, but do, like we both said, take care of yourself holistically. Look at your lifestyle, look at the other things that you're doing, and find somebody in your area or Hannah that is going to be able to help you. So thank you once again. There's going to be another video coming up on screen, so do take a look at that if you want to check out another interview, and I'll see you over there. Take care. Thank you so much, Hannah.
Thanks.